So, do they put dissolvable? I have my post-op Friday, so I can ask him all this stuff. But do they put dissolvable stitches in here that just dissolve over time?
I would think they would, man.
Because I don't want no metal in there.
Metal?
Yeah, sometimes they put. I know if they staple down your rotator cuff. I mean, this is just a labrum, so I doubt they did that. But
you would think they would tell you. Sort of like you would think they would have a post-op. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to roll through that.
Friday, I do.
Huh?
Friday's my post-op.
Yeah, but I mean, post-op.
I didn't see the surgery. Well, they came in. The surgeon came to talk to y'all, didn't he?
Talk to Mom.
Yeah,
Yeah, because were you out of it?
I was still out of it. You want to hear a funny story? So they give you the nerve block here or somewhere, and they had my IV. I'm still bruised up from the IV on my wrist. I don't know why they went in my wrist instead of right in my...
They do that now because you're less likely to move this thing around.
I got you.
So that's why they're going down there now.
Well, I didn't even know there's a vein in there, and they went pretty deep. That thing's thick. Anyway.
They probably had to find one.
I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, like, I opened my eyes, and I noticed that they had put the mask on me to pass me out, but they didn't put it all the way on me, like when I had my appendix taken out. It was, like, right here. And I said, hey, does it need to be all the way on? And she said, no, it's fine. And I don't know why I did this, but I went.
And that was it? That's the last you remember.
I was like, why did I do that? I think I was already a little loopy because they gave me a Valium or something. Mm-hmm. They were like, here, take this. I was like,
because some people get anxiety with the face mask on and stuff.
I guess so.
Oh yeah, they know.
When I had the appendectomy, it was like I was in severe pain, and then on top of that, it was all happening so fast. I didn't have time to be nervous. It was like, just cut me open, get this thing on, because they said it was about to rupture. And when that happened, I was at the hospital by myself. Yeah. It was during COVID, so they wouldn't let Braxton and Jen Hope stay. Mom and Dad were at work, so Mom was in session. She couldn't be reached. And then I had like 20% on my phone. My phone dies. And I was asking the nurse, like, can I get a phone charger in here? I need to tell my parents I got to get surgery. So
like
Dad got there literally right before surgery. I have pictures of us.
You know, it's all right.
Like, they're about to take me back.
It's not like your mom was giving birth.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll be all right. You're grown. I mean, most people probably don't have a situation where mom and dad can get there.
Yeah, that's true.
How we doing there, brother? 2?
Let's get it.
Let's go. All right. Hey, so good one today. Welcome back, everyone. I am Dr. J. Joe with my good friend Cameron and sound man, everything, Mr. Chris, with another episode of Flip the Script, SCRIP. Again, drop that T, right? So, listen, brother, you know how you and I are always looking for some kind of fodder to chat about, like we need to. Today's episode that we're going to talk about was started when a couple of days ago my brother texts me, my brother Dale texts me and says, hey, Joey, check out this podcast. This is along the same line of stuff that we've been talking about for years. He said, it's a Dr. Phil podcast. And at first I was like, Dr. Phil, you mean that guy from Oprah? Which, you know, I'm not a Oprah. What did she wind up buying? Weight Watchers, right? So anyway,
she was huge on Weight Watchers.
Not exactly what you call, and of course she still.
I think she's on Ozempic now, but you know.
Well, they did. So she takes Ozempic and puts it in part of the Weight Watchers protocol.
Really?
Sold out, if you will. So anyway, that's why I said, Dr. Phil. I said, come on, Dale. I don't know. He said, yeah, I know. He said, but just check this out because it's sort of the same thing.
He's kind of evolved over time. One of those guys. Like his show's not it's not the Dr. Phil show anymore. Mm-hmm. It's just podcast, but it's still the exact same format. You watch it. I mean, it still looks just like the show. I think it was just a way for him to take back all of the control over it and not have any TV influence.
And keep himself in the spotlight. True. So anyway, he sends it to me. I checked it out, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Interesting podcast. Oh, you've heard quite a bit of it here before, but this one was. Or at least I titled this podcast, we titled this podcast, The American Food Crisis. Now, because some of this material is new and I didn't want to lose any of it, I jotted down some notes. So if you don't mind, hang while I sort of look back and forth between those as we discuss this topic today. On this podcast, he had Casey Means also, who is the author of that new book, Good Energy, that's been out now for about, I think, 2 years now. And also Julian Michaels, who's one of those health gurus. She's been around for some time. They were both on the podcast as well. And it was the topic was the epidemic of chronic illness in America today, that's constituting about 80% of all disease in the United States. And Means goes on to say that we are poisoning America with our food industry today. Surprise to us? Not really. Numbers, pretty astounding. 10,000 different chemicals found in the U.S. food supply. 10,000, rather, right? And also not allowed or approved in other countries around the world, which is why, I know Trump's sitting here going today and trying to convince the world with the tariffs that, hey, look, you got to take some of our products, buy some of our foods. Well, nobody wants to buy it. If you can't clean up the mess, especially with our numbers as far as where the healthcare system is, it's pretty pathetic, right? We're ranked, number 30 in the world, and we spend more, we're charged more for our health insurance, and we pay more as individuals than anybody on the planet, and yet our return on our investment is very shallow, to say the least. But so Casey Means goes on to say here, and I quote, "We are writing a check for poisonous, addictive foods to our society." Yeah. And what really blew me away was the connection where all this is going. And even though I spoke a little bit in my first book, Light Your Fire, about a similar scenario, it kind of blew me away when I saw the correlation with what's going on and who's responsible for the majority of this. Casey goes on to also say parents are inadvertently, this is pretty strong, committing genocide, ouch, on our kids with what's happening with food, addictions, and toxicities. I had a patient come in again yesterday, Darren, you know him, and we were discussing this podcast, and he said over in England there's a particular cereal that's sold here and there, breakfast cereal for kids, that has 7 different ingredients. Over in Europe, here in the United States, 30 different chemicals.
Same thing with Heinz ketchup, same thing. If you go in the store now, because of some pushback, a lot of it from Maha, they've now made a simple version or a no sugar added version, and they're basically the same thing, but basically you look at the bottle and you can tell it's a little bit of a maroon color versus like
interesting. So
burgundy.
Not the high fructose corn syrup this year.
Yeah, so they get rid of that, and they get rid of like the red 40. So the ingredients went from like 40 ingredients down to like 6.
Yeah.
So Mom had me pick up some of that the other day, and I'd never seen that, so I thought that was cool.
Interesting too. But
they're only doing that because
they probably wouldn't list whether or not it was GMO tomatoes.
Probably still is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is what sort of blew me away on this whole top podcast, which is why I said, Cameron, we got to sit down and chat this one up. It appears that in the 1990s, cigarette companies like Philip Morris, I don't know if you remember them, they were big, well, of course, that was big tobacco. Got caught lying to Congress when they tried to state that cigarettes were they weren't putting chemicals in cigarettes to make them addictive. They got busted. But anyway.
But isn't nicotine addictive?
Well, it's just not that, but they actually found, their chemists found chemicals that they could put into the cigarettes that had an addictive response. And they did these with trials on animals, right? And they found the most addictive chemicals that they could use to make their public, the buyers, come back for more and more. This is who now bought over 40% of the ultra-processed food companies in America today. All right, half, close to half. Big Sig, as I call them, is now messing around in our food supply. Who let that happen? Okay, so remember back in the 1980s? Oh, yeah, well. Were you born then? Okay. Well, back in the 80s, cigarette smoking started losing their numbers, sell to the public because they got called out. First, Congress, they went in front of Congress and told Congress, oh, no, there's nothing in here that's addictive that we're putting in, nothing outside of what's natural in tobacco. Well, one of their chemists, well, it's known as what we call those whistleblowers. All right, well, guess what? He comes out and says, yes, we did find a chemical that would increase the cravings, and we put them in the product. So what happens? Well, then these tobacco corporations, they get busted. And now your healthcare system comes out and starts putting labels on cigarette packs, it's warnings, if you will, that these things are not only addictive, but also they're unhealthy.
Cancer causing and stuff like that.
So now they start coming out with the truth. They have to label this, and you start to see the cigarette industry start to lose their profits.
Quick side note is that what's funny is that, like in Mexico, like on a bag of Doritos, nacho cheese Doritos, they put that same type of warning on that type of junk food, excessive calories in it.
Yeah,
so,
on their food in Mexico.
That interesting?
Yeah, well, because, yes, because sadly, the Hispanic, they reach metabolic syndrome quicker than the black population and the Caucasian population. So a smart move for them and for their country. They tend to, when they come to the United States, they tend to get heavier much quicker on our food than the Caucasian or the black does. So yeah, that's
all my buddies from other countries. I have a buddy from Ivory Coast. My buddy lives in Peru, and he's back here for like 6 months, and he's like, what should I do about diet? He's like, I'm eating way less food than when I do in Peru, but I've gained like 20 pounds since being here.
Yeah, and then he goes back home and he loses it again.
Yeah,
right?
eating more, and I'm like, I was like, honestly, dude,
it's the chemicals, pal.
Yeah, I mean, you need to try to eat just straight chicken breast if you can. I don't know.
So what happened with with the cigarettes? That the $1 billion lawsuits they started losing their ass with these lawsuits for the wrongful deaths, etc., because of the fact that these, from the misinformation or disinformation, if you will, that they were passing out to the public. So then they get brought up, and now from the line to Congress and the lawsuits that come in, they move on, pick it up and go, okay, well, let's find another way to make a profit on the American public with our same schemes, if you will. And what do? Well, they rigged the FDA with their money and the NIH and all the lawmakers up in Washington, D.C. Surprise, surprise. No, not hardly. So they funded their money in, so these guys would basically turn a blind eye so that they could peddle their chemicals. And, we've had podcasts about what that's. We talk about it, with the Roundup and the other companies, right? So follow the dots on that, because a big American corporation here, interesting number, received $500 billion, dude, over the last 20 years, $500 billion to fund their GMO crops.
From the government?
That's right. Soaked with these chemicals, again, that the cigarette.
And what are they, when they give that $500 funding, $500 billion funding, what are they saying that it's for? Are they saying it's for pesticides, crop management, or what? Are they literally saying it's for?
Well, you know what? That'd be interesting, something to follow. But yeah, I would say all those included. Yeah. So that their chemists, scientists can come up with a GMO plant that they can, again, in case of wheat, for example, that they can harvest twice a year instead of once. But the body that takes 60,000 years to be able to change a genome, we don't know what this is going to do to us, these GMOs. We have no earthly idea. We do know what's happening with the wheat now, right? 4 times the glutens, and we'll talk about that here in a minute too, which has increased a whole lot of diseases. But the plant can now be harvested twice a year instead of that one time a year with that 4-foot amber grain that the song.
Are other countries still using the 4-foot amber grain?
No, I don't think. Again, I would think for agricultural, not for agriculture, but for profit reasons, that would be a good thing to check into.
You got the France bakeries and stuff like that, and they have, and in Italy,
and they're using a different grain. Good point, bro. Because you know what, they use what's called a soft grain. So that's what we're checking into, because chances are they're probably sticking with the old original seed.
And Europe has stricter guidelines for.
But however, think about this again. So now we're trying to sell our wheat around the world as well, and this might be another reason why some countries don't want it. But I can't say Russia's not doing the same thing with theirs, because chances are, they're all about the dollar as well, and building up their military. But going on to this, and let's move on to the next stage. This is what kind of surprised me, not so much. I talk about this in my book. But so with the GMOs and whatnot, then the big SIG companies, they are part of funding of the NIH, and these guys go on to shape or form the food pyramid today. So they were responsible for that new pyramid that came out in 1985 that I talk about in my book in the 1980s, to funnel the food and the chemicals into our kids and into our society. Now that I was not aware of. So I learned something in this one. I did not know they were behind the money to actually fund that pyramid for their own profit and to form an addiction that would result in overconsumption. Smart business marketing, for them,
we did.
Not for this society, not for the American healthcare system.
I think we did 2 episodes on the food pyramid, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And this kind of comes around, and I would have loved to have some of this before those 2, but that's the way life works. Means goes on to say this, check this out. Food pyramid, one of the deadliest documents in American history. Agreed. Because we know that thing's turned upside down. Especially that new one that came out, which is worse than the one in 1985, right? That had all the cereals, kids' cereals on the bottom, which is the ones that they want you to consume. So, the cigarette companies invent this document, and then they purchase it, or they push it to the food companies. And of course, the food companies love this because, that's all their products, the processed foods, on the bottom of the pyramid. So the healthcare industry and the food industry both. Let me back up on that. The healthcare industry in America as well. All right. They stayed silent on this one. Why? Because they profited from this pyramid. Right? Healthcare system gets a whole bunch of sick society. Business is booming. Connect the dots on that. So Should I sum it up for you, brother?
That is interesting because there was a Nestle basically wanted to get into the Japanese market for coffee, and someone that
For coffee?
and somebody was like, that's like 100-year play, and they're like, what do you mean? You're like, well, people in Japan, that's just, first off, that's just kind of how the culture is. Like, all their businesses are really old, long-term businesses, but then also no one has a taste for coffee. You know, they do other stuff, and he's like, so what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to do like a super elaborate marketing scheme. And so they said you're gonna have to basically, and this is what they did, is that you create a TV show, and in that TV show there's a candy, and this candy has coffee flavor. Then you come out with that candy for real. Then you come out with the coffee. And now, like,
the cartoon comes out.
There's like a bunch of Starbucks there now. Coffee's huge now in Japan. And so it's kind of almost like
slick marketing, man.
It's almost like they did something like that, to where they talked amongst themselves and said, okay, we can't do cigarettes anymore. You're going to get them sick. You're going to do this, and then we're going to do this.
Interesting.
It almost seems like that.
Here's the interesting thing about Big Sig. Big Sig over in Asia now, they took the market over there because they don't have the restrictions that they have in the United States.
Smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, kids are smoking cigarettes over in Asia, right?
Yeah.
This is what I hear. People go over there and said, it's amazing. Anyway.
Little kids smoking cigs.
I mean, take it somewhere else. But in the meantime, Big Sig, hey, let's make some money on these Americans, because these guys are gullible. Whatever we throw on the television, they're going to buy it, right? So let me sum this up for you. This is what I got out of all this, okay? Bingo, here we go. First, the tobacco cigarette companies killed millions with their product back in the 1930s all the way through today, being cigarette consumption, tobacco. Okay, so then they move on and they buy the processed food companies here in the United States. Probably abroad as well, but this was podcast where they were covering the United States. And then they add the toxins and the addictive chemicals to it, and they market them with false information, and disinformation to the American public. Next step, like they did with cigarettes back in the 30s and 40s. Next step, they push their processed foods through our food pyramid with the help of the government, NIH, Big Pharma, and Big Food. Next, phase on down, then our healthcare/sick care system, industry, they stand up and applaud this whole thing. Why? Well, because they have a lifetime of patience. Follow the arrows. Public citizens with chronic disease, now that accounts for, like we were talking about before, 95% of what the healthcare industry is treating. Chronic disease, which, by the way, there is no drug to cure chronic disease. Remember, they're metabolic in nature, means we ate our way into it, and the cigarette companies know it, our big corp knows it, so put it in the food, and everybody makes a profit, including the insurance industry. But the sick children are the key thing, Cameron, because a medicated child is the most profitable product in the American healthcare system. That's why they get them on there early. You know, and the sad truth is, like today with obesity and type 2 diabetes, this was unheard of in the pediatric doctor's office 40 years ago, brother. Maybe once in a lifetime they dealt with a diabetic child. Today, half of most pediatricians' offices are dealing with kids with type 2 diabetes, obesity, and food-related diseases. So, give me an example of that too, man, is autism, right? Back in the 1960s, you were looking at 1 in 10,000 children.
What's it now, like 1 in 34 or something?
Bingo. Yeah.
Crazy.
So again, what's going on, right? And why our country and those same rates of growth are not occurring anywhere else in the world? People, it's in the food. Same thing with your Alzheimer's. We call it, what do we call that now? Type 3 diabetes. right? Link it right back to where it is. Now, I've also mentioned this in my first book, Light Your Fire. And when I mentioned this, I talked about how today's food industry is chemically alternating the foods like Philip Morris did. So bear with me, on page 81 of my first book, when I wrote this 3 years ago, I was not familiar with this correlation. But I did sort of write a topic, a few paragraphs on what I called the pesky pyramid, which was on page 80, actually. And I said, I talked about this, many breads today are laced with a substance called zorphines, which increase addiction responses. Just like the substance morphine, these chemicals cross the blood-brain barrier, creating an addiction response. This results in your craving the chemical and the product throughout the day. And then I went on to say, it's very much like what Philip Morris Company did with cigarettes back in the 1970s and 1980s.
You wrote that in your book?
I wrote this in my book.
That's super good.
There's a lot of stuff in this book, people.
You just forget it's there sometimes.
Now, you might want to check it out. You might find some interesting read. Now, I go on to say this too. Go down one paragraph. Since the American government began the NIH food pyramid, American government / Big Sig, now that I know, food pyramid in the early 80s, obesity has skyrocketed by over 200%. I go on to say, again, this coincides with the time wheat structure was changed, genetically modified, like we talked about, the GMO, to increase harvest capabilities. When this happened, gluten content also increased, resulting in a 200% increase in autonomic disorders. So see, I was picking up on this 3 years ago. I go on to say, scary to think there is a link in there somewhere. Well, you're damn right there is. We're talking about it right now. Now, I also go on down, drop a couple of sentences, and I say, if these numbers were to have been changing at said rates that I just talked about 200 years ago, we may all be extinct today. Something to think about. So anyway, here we go, right? So, like I said, interesting. There's some stuff in this book that I forget I wrote sometimes. So, again, Philip Morris, 1980s, right? Their business starts to drop. Along comes our 1980-85 food pyramid funded by same peeps. Spooky. And you know what? Cameron, I also asked this, dude. Okay, so the lawyers for them back in the day. Okay, obviously they have learned their lesson since the time when the tobacco poisoning days, and lost billions of dollars, right? So my thing was, with what we have going on today, and I write about it in the book, this is not new stuff, but yet. And we have the thing, the obesity, the diabetes, we have the cancer rates going up, and cancer loves sugar, and we're pushing carbohydrates, sugar, but yet nobody's calling out these companies. So what's going on? Did their attorneys figure out something with the cigarette Big Sig thing, that they have found a loophole to avoid getting caught and being responsible for the poisoning of the American public by profit-driven corporations in America? Or are they just paying off Washington?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's gotten so big, I don't think there's any reversing it. I think it's more of just
waking American up, talking about it like we do,
making your own choices, and just because you're not gonna stop Kellogg's at this point. They're too big. You just
got to be a rebel in this situation. You really do.
Right.
They're using the same slick marketing strategies they did with the cigarettes from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, all the way through. Misinformation, disinformation. That same misinformation and disinformation is why I lose people like my mom at an early age of 75 from cigarette smoke and COPD. right? And then the people dying from the cancer related from it as well. All right. Back in her day, it was cool to smoke. Like you just said, it was on television
in
everywhere.
high school,
all
right?
the movie stars, that same old thing. So really, dude, this is the same old strategy. You following me on this, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Is now being used to sell toxic foods and mislead, misinform U.S. citizens with the similar disease-producing outcomes as they did with the cigarettes. These corporations can't sell that big cigarette, and the same thing with the opioid. They can't sell that lie anymore. So they'll just redirect their propaganda to the food industry, right? Big food lie. So my thing, like we were saying here, wake up, guinea pigs. Sadly, for many of us, you know, you were talking about too late, possibly, because you get this, and I get this a lot in my clinic when people come in and they want to change, and you tell them that we're going to have to eliminate some things, and you get this, oh, I can't do that. So our societies, that's sort of the mindset. We talk about this. I learned this a long time ago. If I bring in a patient and they come in and we're trying to change some things in their diet, if they're on 6 Diet Cokes a day, brother, don't try to tell them, okay, we need to cut those out. They will leave you, okay? They will. Sugar addiction is worse than heroin. So you have to move slowly. Change takes time, but it's difficult when they're pushing this on you. And when they push something like bread on us, bread is the big addiction that a lot of my patients have. Oh, I can't give up my bread. Well, bread turns to glucose faster than table sugar. Our bread does, right? So the correlation there, yeah, I can see. But we've got to educate. Again, remember what we were just talking about too. That one thing, knowledge. Once you acquire it, nobody can take it from you. Pass this kind of stuff on, because making people aware is a place to start. But, you're going to find it on television all day long. Same thing they do with the pharmaceuticals. I was watching that this morning. God, every other commercial was pushing some damn drug today.
Just be consciously aware
Of your awareness. Yes, good point. We'll wind it up with that one, Chris. So, again, and also, shout out with us. Hit that like button if you do, opine. And as always, Cameron, we're out for now. So, everybody have yourself a great day.
So you ain't missing one.
Thanks, Simon.